Today on LA Currents, Brenda Shockley is at the helm of the mayor's Racial Equity Action Plan. She is a visionary leader with keen strategies to create a more diverse, fair, and inclusive Los Angeles. Next, did you know that the city of LA has one of the most distinct streetlight ecosystems in the country? The new director of the Bureau of Street Lighting is here to talk technology, design, and the benefits of LEDs. First, she is the CEO of the Downtown Women's Center, an organization that exclusively serves and empowers more than 5,000 women a year who are experiencing homelessness. Let's get to know Amy Turk. Since 1978, the Downtown Women's Center has offered shelter, support, and services. And today I'm delighted to be joined by its CEO, Amy Turk. So nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Maria.
All right, so obviously it's been around a long time, but when I mentioned shelter services and support, what are some of those programs that you offer down there?
At the Downtown Women's Center, we started in 1978. Our original service was called a day center, which we still operate, where any woman experiencing homelessness can come to our door for 3 nutritious meals a day and access to a shower, restroom, and longer term services that lead to permanent housing, either with us in our own supportive housing, services that also lead to healthcare. We have a medical health clinic on site that lead to jobs. We help women find employment, both with us and our social enterprise made by Downtown Women's Center and throughout the community. So we really at Downtown Women's Center try to get to know the person, help her build her own kind of goal plan, and tailor the services that we have around that. One person might need, more sessions of mental health therapy. One person might want to go straight to writing her resume and applying for jobs. And it's a little bit different for everyone, but fundamentally, ultimately, everyone needs a home.
So who is eligible for services at the Downtown Women's Center?
We're open every day as a drop-in center, and no referral is needed, and any woman who needs a meal or a shower or a place to just have a friendly person speak to her can come down. Our website is www.downtownwomencenter.org.
Okay. There are so many positive things that have come out of the Downtown Women's Center because of that one-on-one personal care. You must be very proud of the success stories of the people that you have been able to take from life of trial and trauma into something that feels more like a promising existence. Yeah. Who are some of those people and what are some of the things that have happened?
Yeah, there's so many stories. That's what keeps me in this work.
Right.
I'm thinking of a woman who I know she would give me permission to say her name, Lavina. She needed to stay in shelter because just life kind of unraveled and didn't have enough money to keep up with her rent. But she came over to the Downtown Women's Center and started working in our employment program. And she was placed into a position in our social enterprise, like I said before, is called Made by Downtown Women's Center. One of the roles in there is to make our handmade products, our candles and soaps that we sell online. And she started doing that. And it really sparked and reminded her of her love for her own ability to craft. And she started her own business. It's called Vina Handbags. She makes beautiful leather purses and business card holders, and she's just a true partner. So we now sell her products together. We kind of co-brand the business. We go out and do pop-up shops together. She just spoke to our board of directors the other night. It's just a really nice collaboration.
So this social enterprise program, because I saw it, it's pretty cool. When did that start, and has it really helped? Because as you mentioned, there's never enough money for anything, and I imagine that there's a great need for funds to keep the Downtown Women's Center going. So how has that helped, and when did that start?
Yeah, we started in 2010. We are still in our original location on Los Angeles and 3rd, though at that time we had renovated a building on San Pedro and 5th, and we were moving there, and part of the agreement with the community was to have a retail space that could be used for any resident of downtown. So we opened the coffee shop first with the handmade product line. we knew that the women wanted to work. We also knew that they came with a lot of like crafting interest, and there's really something special about sitting in a circle and making something together. And so that's where it also became basically a mental health program, is to sit around and make the soaps and be in community with each other, and then see how that sells and creates revenue, which then allows us to employ more and more women.
This whole year has been a trial and for everyone and every corner of everyone's existence. How has the DWC fared during the pandemic? What have you had to do, and what were some of the adjustments you had to make?
Yeah. You know, I'm so proud of everyone in our community, from the women we serve, our staff, our volunteers, our board of directors, everyone just really like, what could I do? What can we do? And we offer permanent housing, so of course that stayed the same. What we normally did inside for more drop-in services are literally outside in our parking lot right now. So literally we have mental health counseling happening in our parking lot, or case management, or helping people write their resumes in physical environments that are safer. We were really appreciative to be a part of the Project Room Key initiative, and we currently are operating a hotel not too far from our main location. And in addition to that, helping people move from the hotel into permanent housing, and there's new like CARES Act dollars to help us with that.
Let's debunk a couple myths about the room key. You know, these opportunities were available for unhoused to move into, and then there was this controversy that they didn't stay, or they moved out, or they weren't actually all fully utilized. When it came to women, and single women in particular, does that reign true or not? Or did these women actually go, stay, and have progressively moved on?
Yeah, in our experience, women moved into permanent housing as soon as they could. We were kind of uniquely opened last year, and then we closed in November before the city knew that the new administration would move from 75% FEMA reimbursement to 100%. So we were closed. The women that were in our hotel moved to other hotels that did have vacancy, and we continued to support them in their long-term efforts to find permanent housing. And then when the FEMA 100% reimbursement came, and frankly, when Judge Carter shone in his flashlight
Big spotlight
on Skid Row and women in particular, that gave us the opportunity to move back into that same hotel and work with an additional 60 women there.
So what do you need? What do you want? I have a pretend magic wand here, and all of your hopes and dreams will be fulfilled when it comes to DWC. What can people do? What do you want? And what do you see the future?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to connect to the work at Downtown Women's Center, supporting our business. Volunteering. Right now volunteers are making like hygiene packets that we can hand out to the women, or snack packs. The easy things for us to hand out are clothing donations. We're a community-based organization. We're only a little less than 50% government funded. So our private funding from individuals is incredibly helpful, so that we can be nimble and really just meet the needs of the women as they appear. And getting civically involved, calling your elected officials to say you support housing. Ideally support housing in your community if that's a need. Being a yes person, not a no person, will help us get to more solutions.
Is this an ever-escalating problem that will not be solved? Or do you feel, since you're there, you're frontline, you see it on a daily basis, that there are solutions that can make this better?
Yeah. Oh, I entirely believe that we can end homelessness.
Yeah.
And I believe that because we didn't have homelessness in the 70s really until the beginning of the 80s. And the main ingredient was affordable housing and jobs that were considered living wage. When those started to erode, when housing prices just skyrocketed, good blue-collar jobs went away, we saw an increase in homelessness.
And are you feeling optimistic, or are you feeling a little challenged?
I'm always optimistic.
Right.
And I'm a social worker, so I'm always a little challenged here.
All right. Anita Bennett sits down with LA's first Chief Equity Officer, Brenda Shockley, and shines a light on her role, responsibilities, and her mission to bring forth change.
Last summer, Los Angeles, like so many other cities, saw massive crowds take to the streets demanding racial justice. The catalyst for that call for change was the police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Now, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti listened, and he appointed the city's first ever chief equity officer. The woman who took on that role is Brenda Shockley, the city's deputy mayor for economic opportunity. She is with us today to discuss LA's Racial Equity Action Plan. Ms. Shockley, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for having me.
So what is the city's action plan?
Well, the city's action plan is rooted in the mayor's Executive Directive 27, which was issued after and during the wake of the demonstrations. The racial equity in city government is really what the Executive Directive focuses on, as well as the contracting, where the city spends well over $1 billion in vendor contracts. Organizations and businesses of color have been identified as really almost de minimis in terms of the amount of money that the city is spending.
But addressing these issues, there are critics who will say, well, this is affirmative action that the city is trying to do. So how do you respond to those folks?
To those same people, the advantages that you and generations of your family have received as part of the largesse of being an American, that same consideration and the righting of those wrongs, those things that were done to others in order to increase your wealth, that has to be addressed, that has to be corrected. So the mayor's Executive Directive 27 addresses the recruitment into city government, the hiring, the retention, and the promotion. And we'll work closely with the personnel department. Every city department had, pursuant to Executive Directive 27, to prepare a racial equity plan by last September. The executive directive was issued on Juneteenth, as we in the African American community refer to June 19th, and it was very symbolic because Juneteenth actually was very much tied to how some years later, some years after the end of slavery, legally, that people in certain parts of Texas did not even know. So that's the significance of Juneteenth, and it was particularly significant in the wake of the George Floyd killing that the mayor and the city of Los Angeles take a position, an intentional position around racial and social justice.
And in terms of city contracts, what can be done to make that more equitable?
Well, I think that the city process, what happens is that as we use that expression, and it takes on more and more meanings, the quote, usual suspects, in the sense that, as you know, the process to navigate the city, whether it's employment or whether it's contracting, whether it's services, tends to be fairly complex, and it allows those who have the experience to continually obtain the contracts.
Exactly.
And one of the things, if I can take a little liberty, is to say that equity can be distinguished from equality. Equality is when everyone is, quote unquote, in that context, treated the same. However, equity is about meeting people where they are. It is about fairness. And sometimes, often, being, quote, equal is not being fair.
You also touched on the LAPD, police, And there are some other folk who say the LAPD was heavy-handed last summer. So how do we address these issues in the city?
Well, I think you address them the way they're addressing them now. You have a full investigation. I think that Chief Moore is sincere. I think that he's walking that line, because anyone who has you want to support your staff, yet at the same time you have a commitment to the public, and that has to be done in a way that is sensitive, that is fair, and that is transparent.
It's it's heartbreaking, the homeless issue in Los Angeles, and a disproportionate number of them are Black. What can we do as a city?
Well, I think that, and the mayor has said it over and over, we have to have a FEMA level response. You don't do as much as the money allows. You have to do what has to be done and find the money. You have to do what has to be done. And I think that while it certainly created a level of confusion and frustration, Judge Carter's impatience has also helped to remind us all that this is not how we live as Americans.
Yes.
And I can't pretend that the fact that the largest unsheltered population in the United States of America is located steps from here. And it is not just happenstance that 90% plus of those unsheltered people on Skid Row are Black.
We're running out of time, and I do want to talk a little bit more about you. Before you came to the city, you helped found Community Build. Tell us about that.
Well, yes, that was a very exciting time, but it was also a time where this time after George Floyd, we avoided what was the destruction and the like. In 1992, after the verdicts came in the Rodney King beating, the first time we all could see for ourselves what happened. And I think that had a lot to do with when the verdicts came in, people who were already a tinderbox, people who were already just marginally a part of what was going on, that didn't have any sense of hope, didn't have any real support system, didn't have the training, didn't have the education. Sadly, the only power they had was to destroy. And so Community Build was created as an particularly African American, but not really that because our programs were for everyone, but it was a South Los Angeles response to the civil unrest.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Deputy Mayor Brenda Shockley, for enlightening us about the city's equity plans, and best of luck.
Well, thank you, and I think if I can just have a moment is just to say, it will take all of us, city family, outside of city family, but it can happen. It can happen if we all recognize that we have to tap into our humanity. And if we only see and only provide to others that which we have, we will be well on the way.
He's the man behind the maintenance and improvement of LA's 220,000 plus street lighting infrastructures. Miguel Sangalang talks about making our community safer, more livable, and equitable through street lighting. Well, there are over 200,000 of them, representing over 400 designs, and it's fair to say that Angelenos have had a love affair with them for many decades. I'm talking about LA street lamps. And I'm delighted to be joined today by the new director of the Bureau of Los Angeles Street Lamps, Miguel Sangalang. So nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me as well.
We kind of talk about street lamps and everything like that, but what's the scope of the Bureau of Streetlights?
Sure. If you were to talk about the specific scope, I mean, in charter, it's to maintain the street light infrastructure of the city on behalf of its residents. I think, though, that ever since the beginning of the Bureau, it's been far more than that, more than meets the eye. You can see that the very first time we had streetlights, there was a transformative change in how we approached public safety, and we thought that was a much safer than more illuminated city. Made night a much more pleasant time to be around and walking around the city. Now we actually see it kind of changing in the technology that we're applying, more around connectivity, and so it's been a way for us to install new technologies like 4 and 5G infrastructure that will help accelerate our reach and our bandwidth and space around what we can do on the internet. So lots of different things happening right now.
Using technology, the 5G technology, expanding the infrastructure, safety, and everything like that. So what are some of the things that are really on your front of page that you want to address quickly?
Sure. I think it's been broad-stroked, kind of categorized as smart city, but actually there's many different facets to that, and we've been helping many of the different departments in the city on Vision Zero. So we've worked on transitional lighting, and that is an aspect where we actually have an area of the city where after events, pre-COVID, after events, we would actually make areas brighter. And so, in that, we would make it safer for pedestrians who were walking across the street, for motorists to see them as well. Then it would dim back once everything was done. We have technologies now that we're deploying that will help us kind of mash up satellite information with street level sensors. So satellite information from JPL will be mashed up with our information at the ground level to give us better insights on the air quality that we actually breathe. And that'll help policymakers make decisions on what we should be doing in the future as well. So lots of different things that we're attaching to our poles. It's far more than what, again, I mentioned earlier, the charter just says maintain the street lights, but far more because it's a vertical piece of infrastructure that everybody wants to have a little bit of play with, to be honest.
You just made me think of something. Okay, so let's take this just into the hypothetical sci-fi world. You're talking about large-scale events, which happen in Los Angeles all the time. We definitely have the Olympics coming, assuming that the world is a place in which that is going to be able to be possible.
Very soon.
Very soon. I know. Well, we're doing good if we can make sure that the rest of the planet also catches on. But so, literally, you can put the dimmer switch up to full so that it's well light. Is that possible, say, in areas you used to having the helicopter spotlight come down when something dramatic has happened? Is it even possible in the future to maybe create an environment where you can, turn the lights up bright in an area in which something is a crisis is occurring? Maybe it's a fire, maybe it's an earthquake issue. Well, if there's an earthquake, there might be problems with that, but or a crime or something.
When it comes to public emergencies, I think that's where some of the smart city aspects will help. Wouldn't it be great if in the future, if with all of our smart nodes, if there's a tsunami warning, instead of just looking at the road for the static sign, you can actually see the flashing lights on the street lights as well. So many things that we can kind of apply technology to resolve some of those issues. I think much of that still has to be formulated in policy and what we're trying to achieve. And we also have to kind of refresh our entire infrastructure. So we have an aging infrastructure that we have to deal with right now. We're hoping to refresh it. We're working on pilot programs to do that, and then also looking at kind of future strategies to try and turn that over as well.
Okay, so you talked about safety, but then there's also light pollution. So I would imagine that those two things, because not only are we supposed to be a smart city, we're supposed to be a green city. So balancing those two things out, what are some of the things that will help illuminate and create a safe environment, but at the same time understand that what we do affects the planet at large?
Yeah, and I think the Bureau has had a history of that, and I'm very happy to have interacted with the Bureau in many different ways and different roles before, and supporting some of the work that we've been able to achieve. So over the past 10 years, we've had our LED lighting retrofit program that changed our high-intensity discharge lights to very energy-efficient lighting, LED lighting. And that has been a great reduction. It's almost like taking over 60,000 cars off the road and saving $10 million a year. So it's been a great savings that have then allowed us the space to do more of the smart city things that we'd like to do because we have spare capacity and energy. I think that to what you're asking when you talk about light pollution, I think that's where we're looking at the greatest amount of flexibility, very similar to transitional lighting, where we're kind of making it brighter for times that require it. We have over time changed the light temperature so that it is less impactful to the larger environment as well. So lots of different changes that require flexibility that we are hoping greater technology adoption and use will help us manage over time.
Okay, so let's talk about the lamps themselves for Monica. That was a light installation that had to be moved, so it was originally in a parking lot, was it not?
Yeah, and now we've moved it to very close to our main yard at Santa Monica and Lyman. It's actually across a branch library at Coanga, and so we worked with the artist to rededicate it last December, and now we are able to kind of show it and display it. We hope to have a bigger fanfare about it and hope to light it up really well in the near future.
Because we all know Urban Lights, which is in front of LACMA, because, if you ever drive up and down Wilshire, if you're allowed, when there's no construction. But this also kind of represents the legacy of Los Angeles and the lamps from the different environs that represent the diversity and the, just the vast, interesting qualities of the city.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it shows a great progression from 1925 onward to the history of Los Angeles. So it's a great Instagrammable, just like Urban Lights, place to go to.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go to the now. I was fascinated to learn that because there's so much infrastructure already provided in a street lamp, that it is possible that even in the future, they may, and I'm using quotes around the word may, be able to help with Los Angeles and the digital divide.
Clearly, during the pandemic, there was a widening digital divide that we can see. And one of the strategies that ended up happening is the use of Wi-Fi hotspots, right, from the different carriers, right, and distributing that to children that would otherwise not have access. Well, those Wi-Fi hotspots are connected to infrastructure that are attached to our streetlights and other public facilities, and so it was very important for us to accelerate that as well. So, you can't bridge the divide if you only have one piece of the puzzle there. And so we've been very much accelerating. We actually accelerated our 4 and 5G permitting about 2,600% over the last few years to try and accelerate that.
What are some of the priorities on your list to make sure even the most rudimentary safety is put into place when it comes to street lamps?
We're working hard to make sure that the service requests coming out from our residents, we're completing them as fast as we can. It's been a bit of a challenge with the pandemic and what that has brought up for operational change, but still trying to change how we do our work in order to achieve the goals that we want to. I think thinking about our assets strategically, thinking about what we would like in the future, would we like better information and better sensors to share with our sister bureau and departments.
If we hadn't touched on something that people want to find out about, maybe if they just literally want to report an outage light, a light that's out, or offer suggestions for their neighborhood, or somehow get involved with what's happening with the bureau, what's the easiest and most streamlined way for them to get in touch?
I think you can always reach us through the My LA 311 app. You can always reach us by calling 311. You can reach us at bsl.lacity.org and our social media accounts, and we'll respond.
Well, it was so much fun to talk to you, and thank you for being a good sport and allowing me to be so personal, even though we just met.
Oh, of course. Thank you. This has been a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Miguel.
Thank you, Maria.
And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.